Okay, yeah, maybe this will do a little bit better as far as being able to get position where the patterns of the lasers are not so yeah, kind of the brightness and contrast overriding the if you want to call it temperature saturation and hue. Yeah. So like anyway, so like I think I'm gonna go with it right here. Just looks like it might be good enough right here. But anyway, I just want to include something about the Bryan Adams music video, Thought I Died and Gone to Heaven. The VanHalen OU812. Yeah, and the meatballs, yeah. Yeah, the meatballs, yeah. So like anyway, so like the song Black&Blue as well is what I'm really thinking about right there. And the word relation between like platform and architecture and embedded encryption and the Freddie Prinze Chico stick. Yes, the ethnic background thing about the color code of like McDonald's golden arches, yet the golden like equator of the principle like both half cycles above the equator or line of oscillation, the center line of oscillation, and the electronic schematic fish being a symbolic representation of like absolute Christianity that a lot of Christians put on their vehicles with like a half cycle above and half a cycle below side by side like McDonald's golden arches, and that being like 1 cycle per second in frequency and oscillation being looking like the electronic schematic fish. In any case, yeah, so like I want to include that real quick because the thing about I was thinking about the memory minus the fact of being 35, okay, and you know, ultimately Austin Powers, Blue Bonnet, Imperial Legal, and HTTP : and the ratio // yeah, and the misappropriation allocation of Mississippi, the ISS and the SSI, and the Eurodollar, and the halo left side of the symbolic representation in between the C and the PTIS on the back side of the US $1, and the Euro thing about that symbolic representation. Region 1 and Region 2 that way, and that word transfiguration in alphanumerics 192 applied to a Nuit competence. Based upon the computation of the symbolic representation, a Nuit competence equated to like 204 minus 192 is like 12, or Region 1 and 2 of the United States and Canada being Region 1, and Europe and the Eurodollar that way. And what it seemed to be beyond the paper-made side of methods of banking, of international financial management, going beyond a method of banking that would represent maybe more so the ergonomic side on the gross national product side of you know, commercial venue living quarters. And you know, I'd referred to it a little bit earlier about the 177 volt and the 277 volt of lighting. I'm not sure if it's limited to. I know that much about lighting that automatically it's like the alphanumeric. I'm sure that's pretty much a turning point in alphanumerics when a person finds the 177 minus 26, like mental telepathy minus God being like 151, you 151, and Holy Spirit, Jesus Christ, and yeah, Secret Service. So like and all that, it seemed to be like, you know, all that alphanumerics in the Eurodollar representing somewhere in my mind gross national product, yet the English language of the Eurodollar. Region 1 and 2 that way, or you know, the alphanumerics of 12 being the Nuit competence minus transfiguration equaling 12, and the quarterback ultimately getting to the bicentennial quarter. Excuse me, an alphanumerics of 200, a plenipotentiary, the 200-year celebration of America, bicentennial drummer, a telepathic Pentagon, telepathic drummer, and also about Richard Nixon and ultimately Lyndon B. Johnson. I'm actually trying to think a little bit about, you know, the Roosevelt New Deal Act and the 6 presidential terms between Theodore and Franklin, the New Deal Act. And the energy, it seemed to be the entire thing about like what's been going on here recently about the center point energy and the Agent 99, so Get Smart, Get Maxwell Smart beyond the center point smart meter. And the Texas and Mexico power thing about, you know, so Get Smart, Get Maxwell Smart, and the thing about, you know, excuse me, McDonald's golden arches representing, you know, both half cycles above the equator degree level of ripple centers of concentric participation involving the 1 cycle per second in oscillation in the center line. That in practical application looking like the electronic schematic fish and the affirmative fallopian tube and the umbilical cord in space exploration in the way of a excuse me, yeah, you know what the Mississippi River is in the way of the misappropriation allocation of like the international superstar and supplemental security and International Space Station, International Secret Service, and supplemental security income. And, you know, I've been kind of like thinking about Bryan Adams in that one particular location that I was actually taken to during the Stargate program of the music video, and the Black and Blue thing about, you know, the mind's eye. And seemed to be the Chris Tomlin song Holy Forever, and the Black and Blue thing about the video itself, and memory minus de facto that way of the mind's eye. And a lot of information that seemed to be involving, you know, the Black and Blue and that setting for the Bryan Adams video, Thought I Died and Gone to Heaven. And actually, you know, ultimately some locations that's on YouTube now, of a bunch of locations that seem to be involving a turning point. It seemed to be that it has the impression of Europe's most wealthiest museum. I actually remember that I'd been taken there. That's pretty much all I remember is that hallway. And I'm almost for certain it's something that is written. And how governors and YouTube is or is not involved. Everything involved, it's just, you know, alphanumerics and linguistics in my memory. You know, kind of thinking that, you know, all that forward is written stuff that's normally found as a King James Version thing about, you know, like 4 words, okay. Predominantly, you know, the alphanumerics of 6 only seem to be the alphanumerics of 6, and doing it so much that I'd realized that I actually was, before I'd realized that I was using 4 different methods of accomplishing and achieving, you know, the numeric value and the alphanumeric value of the word 6, being 52 and VPN, Vice President Network, or Virtual Personal Network, and all the information about 6, and I never got to the point, but, you know, automatically, you know, I'm thinking of the forefathers of the nation in Mount Rushmore, when I'd realized I'd got to like the 4 different methods of, you know, computation involving that one thing about 6, and numeric, alphanumeric, and pronunciation, that way of like analytical and symbolic. I never really, you know, that was like my first thought when I realized it was like Mount Rushmore, forefathers of the nation. In any case, so like, you know, I was kind of like thinking about it. But anyway, I'm going to get back to the thing that I'm really thinking about right now is the FreeSkyRockyPro step-through folding e-bike, the 1200 watt one. And I've been looking at it, it's kind of like probably will be the next electric bike I get. But I have the AntSky right now. It's like 1500 watts. I think it peaks out like at 1800 watts. Like really goes fast. It's, you know, somewhere between like 30 and 35 miles per hour. It's like really has the power for real. But and the thing about the commercial for FreeSkyRockyPro, the one particular guy and his phrase being, you know, out in the woods and consider it shredded, Mr. President. You know, I was telling my dad before he actually passed away in May of 2018. This is now like April of 2025. But I was telling my dad before he passed away, you know, that I'd remembered, you know, actually being taken to that location. But I didn't remember something about like what I'm fixing to refer to now involving Bryan Adams, because like that's like one of the latest things that I'd remember in the connectivity of the Black and Blue. And that location actually taken there, and you know, that's during a 6 to 9 month period. There's like I was like in a setting and aerated while I was asleep. I mean, I knew that much had happened. It was like for a 6 to 9 month place, a 6 to 9 month duration that I was taking to like various locations. And every location, I'm not sure if everything about it's like involved like music videos, but a lot are. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm trying not to have the issue. It seemed to be like the issue of like having to clear my throat. So like yeah, I think there's a little bit more involved than just like allergens. Yeah. So in any case, yeah. So like but in any case, so like the Bryan Adams video involving Thought I Died and Gone to Heaven, okay, and the connectivity of Bryan Adams having that song Cuts Like a Knife. There was an interview I'd went on, okay, in Clear Lake on El Camino Real, and I believe if my memory serves me correctly, that it was referred to as a company called Vortex before it was even made available information that I'm aware of like a Vortex engine involving, you know, General Motors and Chevrolet Silverado. But it was a place about cutlery and culinary, you know, silverware. Okay, but anyway, so like anyway, I went out there in the Clear Lake area and I did that. And I'm not sure if I met that guy, if that is the location. I'm almost certain I'd met him somewhere else other, but I'm thinking if there's anywhere else, it would be that interview. Likewise, that information years later, around 1997, about the Chevrolet Silverado involving the Vortex engine, and all the information having the book Secrets of the Temple House Photos Over Runs the Country, and Robert E. Rubin being so, I mean, so very much on television. I mean, I couldn't really ignore it because all of a sudden, my thought about studying alphanumerics and linguistics was automatically, something about, religion. The King James Version Bible specifically, because of mental telepathy, mind, God being Holy Spirit, and Jesus Christ and Secret Service, okay? So, I was automatic, okay? Because really prior to that, I was already looking for something in an alphanumeric way, and really not finding what I was looking for, involving, like a heart God or Robert, or the thing about escrow, or the Word of God. The only scripture I could find really about, the Word of God is hidden in the hearts, not even in the concordance. Actually, having to read the entire Bible, and that's really as close as it got. I mean, was that one scripture? Not even the concordance, yeah. The Word of God is hidden in the heart. Well, hey, great, thanks. Yeah, that's really nice of you. Yeah. So I had to read the entire thing just to, find that one about, the Word of God is hidden in the heart. And inadvertently with escrow, the word hidden is inadvertently in law suggesting an inadvertent, and I'm not sure if it's the advantage or Vantage Love 30 thing about available information. It seemed to be Vantage Love 30 seemed to be available information, and I'm not sure if ASVAB, it's like a test, okay? Normally of recruiting offices, but it seemed to be virtually everywhere except that. If it's really getting to the symbolic representation of, blueprints or schematics, and ASVAB with available information. When I took the test, I made 97%. Now I think I was going to make 97% on it, no matter what grade I made. But that is the percentage that I'd made. It's 97%. And the Chevrolet Camaro IROC Z28 was not even available, but it seemed to be the thing about Moby and KLOL 101.1 FM rock radio station. Moby the DJ being and going to 97 rock. 97, automatically it's political. 97 rock automatically didn't be the thought of Rock Me Amadeus. It kind of is and it's not now. And some information with Orson Welles narrating, the thing about Nostradamus. And the thing real quick about Nostradamus, it seemed to be, that really Orson Welles' narration about Nostradamus present the 400 years of accuracy based upon Nostradamus' predictions. Okay, and about the new millennium, okay, and the blue turbines of the Persian Gulf, and JetBlue, it's not really discussed, but there's a lot of information that had led to the year 2012, before the movie 2012 came out. Orson Welles' narration of Nostradamus, it ultimately gets to the highest possible score of 2,400. The way Orson Welles, discusses and narrates the information, because Nostradamus, 400 years of accuracy, and him talking about the new millennium, and identifying, millennium automatically as 1,000, and automatically, 1,000 in everything that I'm, available information, like Zion being 1,000 years apiece, or Grover Cleveland on the US $1,000. Yet combined with a pi r squared, or E equal MC squared, about the millennium being the year 2000, and the accuracy of Nostradamus' prediction of 400-year accuracy combined with that being 2,400, the highest possible score, of a SAT test, and ultimately, of a baptism. It seemed ultimately, seemed to be June 14th, 1992, Flag Day on a Saturday morning. Really, the Mormon Church at the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Friendswood, Texas, right off of Sunset Boulevard, okay? And I've seen it 3 ways, maybe 4 ways. Desert, desert. Based upon pronunciation, desert is the only difference between 1 or 2 S's. Deseret is just really, possibly 1 or 2 S's with just the R-E-T. And the thing about, that one street. And it seemed to be maybe possibly some connectivity between, the 3 pastels of Univision in the black, and then the 3 pastels in the white, representing automatically in my mind, based about information already, like the Lexus LFSA, and Mercedes presenting the smart car, Smart for Two, being in my mind automatically something to 2015 Geneva, Switzerland summit meetings, and the Lexus LFSA being the black and white thing, or even the song of like Restless Heart. Why does it have to be wrong or right? Why does it have to be black or white? And the I'll Still Be Loving You thing about it. Yeah, so like yeah, seemed to be exactly the color of the inside of that car. And really the being venue, okay, and the human civil rights, okay, because that was another location involving a rectangle. Automatically in my mind, Abraham Lincoln night vision and the Lincoln Continental hood ornament and the rectangle that way. And the 90 degree of that hood ornament being like a landscaping, horizontal, a wide left to right issue, like reading from left to right as compared to a vertical, like the hood ornament. In 1992, the United States map had a whole bunch of rectangles in a landscape position. Not all of them were identified as restricted areas, but the initials for a restricted area is RA, like Ray or Reagan. During the Reagan administration, the rectangles, okay, and Ronald Reagan being, during his administration, calling the New York Federal Reserve Bank President Paul Volcker to Washington D.C. to get all the economics back in proper perspective. Is who Ronald Reagan calls Paul Volcker. Identified in the book, how true it is. I mean, if it's only an alphanumeric name involving the initials, well then there it is, okay? I'm not real sure about the name actually. If Paul Volcker is really even the name, but, I know that William Jefferson Clinton, had referred to that he's so appalled, and I'm sure it's not limited to that, but I'm almost for certain. Or, the thing about Paul, biblically going through a circuit, a prison, but ultimately it seemed to be, the connectivity of an experience of all this information I'm referring to, and now it seemed to be, like the Bryan Adams, because it seems like that was like one of the latest. And I've seen a video, many times, but I mean, it's just like so many videos now of like YouTube involving, what I call what wasn't then going through it at the time even. Although Abraham Lincoln was the thing about like a mile the only white guy, and everything seemed to be like every name in there, whether it was like predominantly black, or my thought of like automatically just a black dot on a map, and every family name like on a planet, going through a circuit, and me automatically it's like a monetary domestic gross national product of aggregates, not necessarily the idea. What is now like, the Kremlin being the Kremlin, and about an alignment of a telepathic blueprint based upon a shelf on a wall, and the design of the back-to-back issue that you'll see a lot of women do, okay? And automatically it's like, in my mind, know about the ACTP : Austin Powers, Blue Bonnet, Imperial Eagle, and the difference between the colon and the ratio, and the Ray and the ray gun, and the Reagan administration. But anyway, so like all that information was going on, okay? And I'm going to try and not be so broad and at random like direction, but I'm going to slow down a little bit. But it seemed to be that president involving the commercial for the FreeSkyRockyPro step-through folding e-bike, the 1200-watt one. That's one I've been looking at, but I'd met him. They was actually taken back there during the Stargate program, and, an extremely intense thing about, incoherence. A lot of locations during a 6 to 9 month period, and remembering it would only be it being on television. I mean, I knew it was happening at the time, and it's like really seriously intense at different locations. Before I'd even realized that music video was even involved, I mean, I knew that it's like at locations and settings, and just not like grasping. It's like I refer to, the vision as like a newborn child. Not having a concept of language, or the thinking capability of like identifying based upon a language and thought process. The incoherence is very similar to that, but a whole different situation. And yeah, so I mean, it seemed to be the vision more so of like acknowledging, match and identify, and analytical or symbolic or description based upon a thought process. Description of language, and it's more so the vision of that kind of incoherence. I wouldn't really call it blind. Maybe at times it would be so vague and incoherent that being able to distinguish if it's like a wide-eyed open blind side. I mean, it's sometimes in between a yes and a no. I mean, about that kind of incoherence. It seemed to be, I don't want to just like throw it off at subconscious mind chase or oil that way just because it's 181 Houston, Texas, we International Electronic Power. In any case, yeah, so like it seemed to be, quite a bit about an air raid. And the thing about, like a Data Foundry, like once again, okay, presented the SAN software. It seemed to be more so on a monetary and domestic side, seemingly in my mind involving the papermate being the 5610, um, and the African 94 annotated option abortion and Roe v. Wade that way. And it seems to be only of, whether or not of appreciation or depreciation. It's like a really symbolic and analytical thing alphanumerically and linguistically, and maybe a degree definition of intended use. And, the thing about pi r squared of an analytical and symbolic way, like the square, everyone knows based upon the information that the formula works. And it's like already a known fact about the word squared. It's automatically, it's thought of normally of a 9-degree right angle, and normally a square is like an automatic thing about pi r squared, or the thought of like two arrows, open ends, or like even the thought of a protractor, except a 9-degree right angle, or Lockheed Martin, or legal media. Ultimately, the L&M of the last four of the Social Security Administration seemed to be, really Lockheed Martin and legal media of the intersecting axis, and the telepathic blueprint on the wall, and a television series Leave Without a Trace. Because I ultimately did trace my own work on virtually the entire wall, overlapping a whole bunch of like legal paper, using the edge of a legal pad, and all the alignments. It ultimately had got to that shelf on the exact opposite side of the wall, and two vertical lines, based upon that point of view of like the triangles on either side of the shelf up under the shelf, okay, and the two vertical lines is automatically an absolute value already, That's used in scientific notation and algebra. In any case, so like it was like an automatic ground zero thing about hearing something about William Jefferson Clinton ground zero in the World Trade Center, and the absolute zero or zero tolerance and the absolute value and what that is to the absolute dollar. The absolute dollar is terminology used in the New York Stock Exchange, not of investment terminology, more so a stock exchange, and as commercial paper is actually used sometimes as the thought of like a not really voucher on the floor of the Wall Street Journal. I mean New York Stock Exchange. Excuse me. And the thing about it seemed to be that it had ultimately got to the absolute dollar, the Federal Open Market window, and the discount window, and the acronyms. And the thing about commercial paper representing the idea. I mean, if it's the deal about Vantage Love 30 being the commercial, or what advertisement is advertised as compared to Advantage, Advantage, about Vantage Love 30 being like secret de facto, and Vantage Love 30 being the alphanumerics of an eagle, a Bible, a baby, a map, as compared to 30 spelled out being like 100, or what the 100 Club is in code blue, or the telephone, or a quarter, or hospital. Excuse me. And it seemed to be the thing about the 100 Club is ultimately getting now seemed to be like what's going on with supplemental security, and it being described as normally identified, originating as an Austin issue, not necessarily now. It's not that I've ignored it and I put it off, but it's really gotten to the point that really me ignoring it maybe might not be the thing to do. But it seemed to be the sub-6 supplemental security income, the SSI, the sub-6 Treas 310, and the 100 Club. It's automatically now seemed to be like linked to the thing about the information in Secrets of the Temple and the history of the U.S. dollar below the equator in Latin terminology and Univision, ultimately getting to Geneva, Switzerland, and the being venue. And human civil rights being an idea of like being itemized going through a circuit of human capital of investment terminology all along the purple side of the carbon footprint, in my mind, more so of like on the expenditures of the expenditure side. before I realized it or remembered it, it's only because of the rectangle, because of the incoherence, only having the vision, the capability of the vision, and not even knowing where I'm at, okay? But that is the two locations, is the B and venue. And how true about the information, the B and venue is the rectangle, with not the G, the BEIN venue, and all that information in Geneva, Switzerland about human civil rights. And it's almost like in my mind, automatically going through the circuit as itemization, identifying human capital. And you know how on the expenditure side of, like, you know, being flown in helicopters and being on gurneys and, you know, the James Madison dolly, I mean, for real. And taking to different locations and not even knowing how I got there, waking up. There's one time I was on at one location, and I went to sleep and I woke up thinking I was in the same place I was on, in a completely different place, and I didn't even know it until I was walking through a certain part. It was like completely different, and I was all of a sudden I was kind of like becoming disoriented in my mind. It's kind of like, I mean, after a certain point, everything had changed as compared to like the night before or the day before. And automatically, it's kind of like I'm kind of like going, I can't believe I didn't even realize that when I like immediately woke up, having the same appearance except for, you know, the architecture, and the vision thing about it, and the memory of, like, you know, quite an intense time going on during that time. But in any case, so like anyway, so let me get back on it about the commercial involving the FreeSkyRockyPro 1200. And the guy advertising it, and his words are, "Consider it shredded, Mr. President." That location, like, once again, I was actually taken there, and I don't know if it was a reenactment or actually the before, during, and after, or how many times, but that is the location, and that guy in the video. And all of a sudden, it's all the connectivity. It's like world news at the time, like with Robert E. Rubin being on world news and national news at a specific location of, like, and now it seemed to be like the Moby thing, and the wails of Bryan Adams, Moby, the disc jockey for the KLOL 101 FM rock radio station, and him moving to 97 rock and all the beachfront deal about the simulcast on the beachfront, yeah. And the video involving the whales and the Bryan Adams video, Thought I Died and Gone to Heaven. And the issue in my mind, I'm not real clear to distinguish the difference if a hologram is needing any other requirement, like a silk screen or a transparent mesh that would give the impression of transparency, or not thoroughly dependent upon fog or drops of water or any type of mesh, a silk screen that would present maybe a projection as a hologram, but not a hologram. And I don't know if I could really tell the difference, because I mean, I was taken, and that was the thing about the whales during the Stargate program, and the incoherence, and you know, it's only because excuse me, it's only because I'd remembered a certain thing, and it really was a turning point when I knew that memory was like a phenomenally huge thing. Was the one sequencing of, like, Microsoft screensavers involving Europe's most wealthiest museum, and my thoughts thinking, hey, that looks like a funeral home. And then, you know, after thinking about it, and the design of the checkerboard being, you know, like the charcoal gray and the granite, or the ivory marble checkerboard pattern with the white statues, and the hallway seemed to be the only thing I remember more so of it than anything. And then all the videos kind of like came out on YouTube, like it's easy for me to remember, but Barrett is like one of the words associated with, like, a lot of videos involving, you know, music video with a bunch of white and gold, and everyone is just like standing still staring at each other. And at first I didn't realize it, but it's like all the ones with the Barrett, the BAR, and the accent, the AT, Barrett, and the pyramid scenes, and the thing about the AI Vision 6, and not limited to, and a whole bunch of white and gold in futuristic cities, underground, above ground. It seemed to be the Arctic Circle and Antarctica, and, you know, like Alaska, or the Arctic Circle at different locations, of some of the videos involving a whole lot of white and gold, and futuristic cities, of, like, you know, cities that is unreal, like beyond comprehensible wealth. I mean, for real, yeah. So like a, so I mean, all that was like going on, and I was realizing that some of the, a lot of those locations I was actually taken to during a very intense time, and everyone's just standing still, like staring at each other. And I didn't have the connectivity, but it seemed to be, yeah, I would say that maybe be the Europe's most wealthiest museum of like, um, a museum for dead people, being assets, preservatives, and products. But the thing is that all those videos, I mean, everyone is just like standing as still as possible, just like looking at each other. And that was actually happening when I was like there, taken there during that time. And I didn't remember it like immediately. I mean, I'm looking at it and watching it going, wow, man, that's like awesomely like phenomenal. Unlike futuristic design of like, I mean, cities, underground, above ground, and Antarctica and the Arctic Circle, places and locations, kind of like, where is that really at? And somewhere in my mind, like an Aryan Skies Leviathan thing, including some things involving like NASA and the space show. And somewhere in my mind, I'm not sure if Cape Canaveral would be the location, but it seemed to be the Pace Picani hot sauce thing about the Rio Grande and the Hector Pecos County area of like Fort Stockton, Texas, and the information that I've been referring to, involving like in my mind, like Pace concerts and the summit meetings and Boeing and Emirates and Qatar Airlines. It seemed to be the thing about the Fort Stockton, Texas location and the James Null unit in that immediate area. It seems to be the Line 6V series electric guitar combo amp. Line 6 being some idea of conversion to the 7th string. In my mind, something about Hector and Sector in that one particular guitar. And I refer to actually talking about, the Sector Hellraiser. It is the apocalypse, okay? But the thing is that it seemed to be the issue of that geographic of Hector and Sector and Guitar Airline and a transition, in my mind of Guitar and Emirates being like 71 in Pearland and Boeing being the Alphamerics of, 52, the hard and ultimately a VPN of a vice president network, or Pearl. And, my thing about my drum set, Pearl Vision VSX, getting the entire set in the Strata Blue, which you'll see me on is a 35 piece, including hardware, special effects, 15 drums, and, got like 8 cymbals, special effects, cymbals, hi-hats, tambourines, and cowbells, and an effects chime, and effects bell. Yeah, so like it's like a total of like 35 pieces, including, everything, hardware, and the seat. So like I have some of the Strata Blue, and I'm going to get a complete set like you'll see me on with a Strata Red, a Pearl Vision VSX Strata Red with the black hardware, totaling 35 pieces. And I'm going to go with the pasty Color Sound 900 in all blue, and I'm actually already looking for the blue chromium, thoroughly coated chromium, the blue, for everything, and not an issue of flashing or plating, and thoroughly not have any kind of sweat causing any type of discrepancy of like the surface or any chemical reaction based upon, I mean, just sweat or yeah. So like anyway, so like I'm looking for the hardware that way at the chromium, whether it's coated or completely, I mean, thick plated like chromium, blue chromium, yeah, to go with the hardware, the rims, the lugs, the mounts, the stands, and the Color Sound 900, the pasty Color Sound 900 cymbals with the blue. So it's gonna be all blue, and the Strata Blue, the Pearl Vision. I mean, that's like one of the cooler colors with the design of the Strata Blue Pearl Vision VSX, and it's the idea of the ISS mounting. My thing about the misappropriation allocation of the Mississippi, okay, and the Pearl, and even Calamity Jane, yeah, and the Pony Express, and the Horseshoe, and the 8 ohms, and all that stuff about the figure 8 and the infinite lines of the pi r squared, ultimately getting to the alphanumeric linguistic deal about analytical and symbolic and perfect 10-10 vision, with it seemed to be predominantly, the pi r squared, the E equal MC squared, and the exponential quotients of powers of multiplication, a pronunciation more so on the principal side as compared to the power. Yeah, so like anyway, so like it seemed to be that those are the 3 that are used the most, and predominantly, the exclusionary rule of the exclusionary rule provision, ultimately, the thing about the alphanumeric value, the acronym ERP, being 39. But anyway, yeah, so like, and all that stuff about, Del Taco in my mind, it seemed to be being led by a taco, or the ERP being led by, the exclusionary rule provision, the White ERP, and like Diners Club, the White's Cafeteria Diners Club thing in Quantum being led by Wyatt Earp, being like Del Taco being led by a taco, being led by Earp, a light emitting diode angel, like the Del Taco led by the led by Del Taco, So like anyway, so like I want to include that because, and I want to cover it real quick because the Bryan Adams video is like the Black and Blue setting, and the mind's eye thing about it seemed to be, the Chris Tomlin or something about the mind's eye. Some of the content of the lyrics and stuff, but the thing with it is that that one job interview and the FreeSkyRockyPro, the information and availability, and that will probably be, the next electric bike that I get. Right now I have the Sky. It just be continually an issue of getting, what I order and what I've been getting. It had ultimately led, to several exchanges of electric bikes. Now I have the Sky 1500 watt. I mean, it's not any question about it, being 1500. I mean, it's most definitely the 1500 peaking pretty close to like 1800 watts. I mean, it's got real power to it for real. So like I'm going to probably go ahead and do that FreeSky like immediately as soon as possible. About the maybe I'll be lucky and actually get maybe 2400 watts, 2400 watts. What's available now is with the Rocky Pro, the FreeSky Rocky Pro is like 1200 watts with a step through like folding e-bike. It's like really cool, the blue one, That'll probably be the next one I get anyway. But I have the Sky. And the thing about it seemed to be the 19 Sky, which seemed to be the deal about the Ector and Sector guitar, the Sector Hellraiser or the Apocalypse, and the Ibanez S series. I mean, it seemed to be, but networking seemed to be presenting the availability, and with the electronic battery powered effect of the Staniac, Ibanez has it with and without, the S series, but that's the guitar I'm going to probably more than likely get is the Sapphire Blue 6-string and 7-string of the Ibanez S series. I mean, it's like awesome. It's like really cool. And really, the name brand Ibanez is more so of like what I'm about. But the thing of it, and the reason why the availability seemed to be so much about the James and All unit and the Fort Stockton, Texas area and the Ector County thing and the Guitar Airline, Emirate, and Boeing. It just, the availability seemed to be ultimately the Sector guitar of the Hellraiser and Apocalypse. And I got the Apocalypse for a while because of the effects and, the battery power Staniac thing about it. But anyway, I don't have it now. And I wanted to make that clear because I'm actually talking about, the good choice and wasn't so thrilled about the Hellraiser thing because sometimes it's almost like manufacturers actually identify some manufacturing litigation as a deed restriction based upon certain factors. I mean, just terminology. So sometimes that's like really not cool about what available information only has the appearance of what participating factors of maybe not being aware of an accusation that way. Based on availability, it's kind of like almost like maybe potentially being blindsided about information, and manufacturers' products sometimes about that. But anyway, like I want to make that clear because actually I'm identifying it. I'm in a setting. It's between like Bryan Adams. As a matter of fact, I'm in the same setting, the same lighting, the same clothes. But actually, I'm talking about it on the Bryan Adams when I'm doing like 4 or 5 songs, and all the way through like 4 or 5 songs, and then I start talking about the Sector Hellraiser and I refer to it as the Red Rain, which is actually the Apocalypse. And I refer to it in another video, and I kind of got my settings, but it is the same setting, the same clothes and everything. But I'm doing the Effector 2 songs, the Cry song, and the New Jerusalem. And I kind of got my facts. There's a lot going on, okay? And I kind of like interchanged my information with the setting, the color of the clothes, and all that, and the lighting. It's like virtually identical. But it's the Bryan Adams where I'm actually referring to the Sector guitar that way. But really, now I still have the same shirt on, a little bit different setting. But the Ibanez will be, the next guitar. I'm a drummer, okay, predominantly. And my thing about the electric guitar is going to be the Ibanez, S series, 6 string and the 7 string. I would have got automatically, the Yamaha Montage 8 synthesizer. I mean, it's automatically the first choice, based upon what economics provided at the time was ultimately resulting in 2 synthesizers, and Yamaha Modi X6 is what I got, and a Juno, a Roland Juno 88. 2 synthesizers, okay. Ultimately, my thing about a recording studio is getting all this the equipment for it, and it had a considerable amount, okay. And then all this is going on, okay. I saw on YouTube, been on YouTube since 2020, and 2 years later, the year 2022, all this stuff is going on, okay. And I'm trying to really kind of stay calm about a lot of things that's been going on, okay. But it'd been an issue of maintaining the same equipment, whether I'm looking or not, or go grocery shopping, or really just sitting on the toilet or taking a shower. I mean, I had got to the point of the real issue of now it's the smart meter, and having both smart meters removed, and waiting to make sure that Texas New Mexico Power is going to be Texas New Mexico Power, not that don't be fooled by imitations, kind of issue. Somewhere in my mind, there's OPEC and the International Electrical Electronic Engineering and the Roosevelt New Deal Act. In a duration that I'd realized that energy was the duration that seemed to be now, the center point energy, a smart meter, and the Agent 99, so Get Smart, Get Maxwell Smart, and the Texas New Mexico Power transmission delivery service provider. And it seemed to be, really exactly that. Because, at first when I was reading the Roosevelt New Deal Act, I knew automatically, my birth year being 1964, and my thing about, 64 being HTTP, automatically programming and language, and, architecture platform, embedding and encryption, ultimately getting to, the equator and the Freddie Prinze Chico stick, and, the ethnic background about the, political science drum major, and some fine, upstanding, well-balanced, issue of some conduct report of a political science drum major. But as the Chico stick is like gold, light brownish gold, the same as McDonald's golden arches. And the thing about the equator and the center line of oscillation, and the gold edge on both sides, of American Express Bluebird card with the gold edge, the 15-digit card, prepaid card. And it seemed to be that it got to the issue of whether or not if the color code of a Chico stick is ultimately somehow in my mind, it's kind of and it cuts like a knife. And now it seems to be all this information is going on now, and Regions Bank, now card, and a clear access banking of Wells Fargo, and being baptized during the gold rush, and on the stagecoach, for real, and all that information about, the clam, the fish, the ladder, and swimming upstream, and the misappropriation and allocation, and the deal, a little bit of humor about, an affirmative fallopian tube. But anyway, and ultimately it seemed to be the thing about even, an umbilical cord and space exploration, and a space shuttle, and, the thing about anatomy as well as, hardware and software. The word is relation, once again, and it's degree definition it would use is obvious pronunciation, but the degree use between architecture and platform is not quite the same, but in pronunciation it really is, everything involved, everyone around that way. And the thing with this is that embedding encryption and degree definition normally associated with some idea of a kernel or a central processing unit. It's distinguishing the difference between an Abraham Lincoln night vision shadow government Stargate program, what a partition is or is not through the kernel, or some idea of the kernel, or what that is, in color code. It seemed to be that Univision is something about that, and human capital investment terminology involving human civil rights, and the B in venue in Geneva, Switzerland. And I'm not real sure if that's just a Latin American linguistic deal about identifying the building, and I'm not real sure if it's always the B in venue in Geneva, Switzerland, involving human civil rights. I know Univision would automatically be in my mind South America, and the B in terminology, maybe the thing about De Beers diamonds in the book Secrets of the Temple Hospital that runs the country might be the principle of the mining raw diamonds in South America as it is in the book, yet it's really the southern United States and the Houston, Texas area based on Houston, Texas and Harris and Alpha 73 in Egypt or Union and like in Israeli and the Delta Force being the biggest mouth of the river and the electronic schematic symbol of the Delta being a triangle and the power squared being a 6-point star and once again the Israeli flag and AT&T color code and I mean it goes on so like it's described as the south side of Africa yet really it's interchangeable as like the south side of the United States and still refers to Africa and Egypt and all that information about the huge triangle between like the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean and the Israeli and the Egypt and Harris saying and the eccentric triangles of the screensaver. And it seemed to be automatically, a direct involvement with like the Social Security Administration's last four of their number, 12 and 13 being L&M, being like legal media or Lockheed Martin, resulting in, like supplemental security income and a misappropriation allocation of the Mississippi, the ISS and SSI. And, like Annette Panicello is like Pinocchio. I mean, for real. Based upon pronunciation, Annette, okay, or the .net, or the thing about the fish. Or the forecast that way of like wade fishing, throwing in out, or the weather being like we International, or the weather in the forecast. Ultimately, the spore stone that is used in orthopedic surgery. And, something about in my mind that really happened like while I was asleep and didn't even know I had been operated on. And I'm assuming it's probably pretty close to exactly 4 inches on both sides of my humerus bone in between my shoulder and my elbow on both sides is approximately 4 inches that had been actually removed. I mean, I noticed a difference, but I mean, there's about a 6 to a 9 month period. I mean, being able to count for it. I mean, it's like extremely intense. Okay, and I'm assuming that automatically, like an internal treasury involving Washington D.C. making some idea of like mandatory requirements, and maybe not even realizing, ultimately a method of banking would present maybe a vice president network in a way of a carbon footprint, or absentee voting as some idea of an entrance exam of like a Stargate program as some idea of projected estimate option in future had it been they themselves. Really not funny when I think about it the way I do. Okay. In any case, so like it's ultimately gotten to a method of banking as a checking account as an endorsement. And like I'm so like not liking 16-digit numbers on any card. I mean any card, credit, debit, prepaid, anything. And like American Express Bluebird with the gold edge is the 15-digit. And it seems to be, thing about, like the band Toto and the dog and, Judy Garland somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. And the thing about Barbara Streisand and, memories like the corners of my mind, misty watercolor memory. And, the rainbow and I mean the rainbow, okay? And Judy Garland and the information somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, and going through the circuit on the Bluebird bus, and the Bluebird, and the thing about flying is the Airbus. I was on the black and white one, H-160, and I don't remember much about the blue one, but yes, that was like involved too. I mean, it's going on, and the incoherence is like just virtually vision if a comprehensible duration of maintaining even. Yeah, it's like seriously like not funny, okay? But anyway, the blue and white one's like involved. It's like the colors of AT&T, and automatically, based upon what I know about the public phone, the blue phone that used to be the public phones all around the entire Houston area, and if I'm not mistaken, the entire like North American continent, and what that is to Southwestern Bell. But beginning in 1990, I believe was when the whole entire change took place, and AT&T actually took over Southwestern Bell and become, obviously it seemed to be like a 35-year period, which is now 2025, involving the memory minus de facto seemed to be the big deal about 35, and Austin Powers, Blue Bonnet, Imperial Eagle that way, of the HTTP : being the ratio // and all this information. I mean, I looked and I looked and I looked, and ultimately it got to the book. really because of a baptism and experience I've had that had led to the alphanumeric thing. I mean, as serious as A1 steak sauce got, and actually looked and combined it. And after the baptism, it's kind of like, not many days hence having a kind of like a mental magnetic perception of a mental uplifting thing. And months later, and starting to study alphanumeric. But anyway, it's like right after baptism, like during June 14th, 1992, of a Saturday morning, SAT flag day, it's like a baptism of the Mormon Church. After, I mean, that, it was like not many days hence, okay? And there was like that experience, and the same day, the same night, having another experience that ultimately the thing about, in my mind, like a hard guide. Um, and the alphanumerics is 78, and escrow, and Robert, and all this information. I'm kind of like, I mean, something like that happening. I mean, and maybe, the thought of maybe not realizing that other factors were involved. But in any case, so like several days after the baptism, I'm sure it's within a 10-day period or less. I'm almost for certain, but I wasn't counting. And right now, being exact about it, I'm not even going to really attempt even worrying about thinking about it right now. But I'm real sure that it's like within a 10-day period. But anyway, it's like after the baptism, I mean, maybe a 4 or 5 day period, a guy knocks on the door and just hands me uh, ultimately just one US $1. And just walks off. And I don't know if he's even like listening now or lives even in this neighborhood. I mean, for real, what the deal is that I don't believe anything about family law, like anywhere in Pearland. I mean, I've seen and heard it all about, similarities, lookalikes, identical twins, quadruplet, quintuplets, seemingly sperm banks, and the perfection of like manufactured human genetic cloning. And I mean, really, even the evolution of that, I've really seen quite a bit about it. And even different nationalities and colors and races with structure of appearance yet different colors skin. I've seen quite a bit about that during a specific point at different locations about, everyone looking the same, different nationality, different color skin, but, as far as their facial features and body and structure, I mean, looking virtually the same. I mean, it's like, yeah, I'm sure that many people probably won't forget, saying something like that, and that's something similar, like what's been going on, during my life anyway. So, like, anyway, okay, I want to get back, on the thought about Bryan Adams, okay? It's already gone on 52 minutes, but it seemed to be that president involved with the FreeSkyRockyPro 1,200 watt step through folding e-bike, and him saying, consider it shredded, Mr. President. That guy in the Vortex location in Clear Lake is an interview. I'm not sure if that guy is at that location. I'm actually trying to remember, but it's the information during 1997. Moby the disc jockey at KLOL FM 101 going to 97 Rock. In 1997, and the Rock Me Amadeus thing, and the rectangle ultimately identifying, two places of LASIK's laser corrective eye surgery out on the west side of Houston, not far from the Galleria, and Marathon Oil, Tower of Power, the Marathon Oil Corporation, and Data Foundry being inside that particular location, and right next door within 30 feet, the Art Institute of Houston, at the time when I was actually studying music video, television production, and audio production, and music video business out there, and the Center for Advanced Legal Studies, and right before I got there. But anyway, yeah, so like all that had going on, and I was kind of like thinking about that because it seemed to be the thing about the certain information, and 3D International and Chase and Capital, right out there in the gallery area, all that and like Univision being right there at the corner of Highway 59 and West Loop 610. And all that information is kind of like the diagonal thing, like right here in Pearland between like Bank of America and Chase at Pearland Parkway and Broadway now, FM 518, like Univision was to the Houston Post, and the game Connect 4. You had a checkerboard colored format, and all this information about screensavers involving, in my mind, Microsoft and Bill Gates. Ultimately, the Europeans' most wealthiest museum, and a bunch of videos. In my mind, something about it seemed to be even linked, if that's a thought of a location of a Demi Moore movie, not necessarily the movie itself, but maybe the principle of the Hall of Souls. If it being and how true it is, my thought, hey, that looks like a funeral home. I was actually taken there. I don't remember much other than that hallway. And when I saw that screensaver, and I had to realize I had seen it several times, and it just didn't click in my mind as a memory as being taken here during the Stargate program, or remembering it immediately just didn't happen. It was really after the fact of other issues that seemed to be after both my parents had passed away, and I saw it again after they had passed away. And I don't know what it is. It seemed to be that there was like not the stress of other issues. But anyway, it's kind of like when the memory actually really started realizing that I'd seen it, talked about it, and not realizing that was actually involved with the Stargate program. And the duration, it seemed to be like a 6 to 9 month period involving, I mean, serious incoherence and just the thought of like vision, like a newborn child, no concept of language or thought process identifying other than like maybe a match and identify. Not even a match and identify, but only what is there. Like the rectangles were of that one particular location that I was taken back of LASIK laser corrective eye surgery. It being identified with the word plaza. Being alphanumerics of 56. Okay, and automatically in my mind, it's like paper made 56 is 10. It's 94 annotated adoption abortion like Roe v. Wade. Automatically when I see like plaza or like the word Y, WHY being 56 or paper being a paper made as a method of banking and all the information of international financial management of saying software in the front lines of the beach around the carbon footprint and absentee voting and all the information and going beyond, a method of banking. And it seemed to be the thing about the euro dollar that way, the symbolic representation on the backside of the US $1 and the euro dollar and that haloed left side of the symbolic representation. But anyway, right now it seemed the Bryan Adams, okay, in that one interview in Clear Lake, Texas of, I think it was identified as Vortex Cutlery. Before, Vortex was actually identified as General Motors involving Chevrolet Silverado Z71. And opening, that commercial for Free Sky and that guy saying, consider it shredded, Mr. President. And it's kind of like I'm actually trying to place the connectivity. The El Camino Real. In any case, so that was just like something about the connectivity there involving during 1997 and Robert E. Rubin being on World News as compared to World News involving, information of the covert mission as compared to Covern and the Apprentice. It seemed to be the Donald Trump thing about the Apprentice. An apprenticeship that really I was involved with, but was not an apprenticeship at all. Although I'd been there to take a test. Although I was involved with like electricians during a specific time of being involved with like building, First City National Bank. Ultimately, I think it's like 24 floors. Yeah, I was there for like a considerable amount of time. Of a unionized participating factor. Ultimately, leading some idea in my mind, some information of Aerosmith being living on the edge and the huge vibrators stuck in like the outer edges of like floors being poured with wet concrete, getting all the air bubbles out, and living on the edge like Microsoft Edge browser, and now it's like the American Express Bluebird card with the gold edge, and innovation leading the way seemed to be the thing. Whether or not if leading the edge, innovation leading the way with cutting edge technology is only the issue. Whether or not if it's a right wing or left wing thought of proper English numerical composition of the P being visible and pronounced and the P being visible and silent. The difference between a 15 and a 16-digit, card representing whether it's a checking account or not, or if it can even be used that way. And there seems to be the issue right now that the number on my American Express Bluebird card with the gold edge with the 15-digit is now kind of like I'd heard the saying, 2 wrongs don't make a right. And that's kind of like, I mean, am I really being confronted with, parentally, like in my mind, the PG-13 of presidential governors and like parental guidance of, I heard it before, 2 wrongs don't make a right. I mean, is that the right wing and left wing issue of like the US dollar applied to the American Express Bluebird card with the gold edge? Because it seemed to be like now, I mean, who's answering the phone for it? It's not making comprehensible sense because they continually are presenting the issue like they're like referring to any type of conversation that would be like a checking account as a 16-digit on a 15-digit card as a prepaid card, and presenting it like with information that would represent on a scale of like the aggregates of like going through a circuit, and ultimately, somewhere in Geneva, Switzerland, the being venue representing human civil rights or human capital investment terminology, you know, itemizing something more so, in my mind, the purple side of like the carbon footprint in California, the Roosevelt New Deal Act involving the energy. I'm assuming it's going to be the energy of OPEC and international electronic engineering that seem to be the issue of like Chevy Chase and Agent 99, and so Get Smart, Get Maxwell Smart between Centerpoint Energy and now, you know, Texas New Mexico Power. So Get Smart, Get Maxwell Smart, and the thing about, you know, Mercedes presenting the Smart for Two car, and, you know, even, you know, Saturn Sky and Scion IQ being, you know, it's a Smart for Two. I mean, that would have to include Saturn Sky and like Scion IQ, and the highest possible score of the IQ being 200. Or all the stuff about, you know, Richard Nixon and the bicentennial quarter and 200-year celebration of America, and a plenipotentiary ultimately getting to, you know, like the exclusionary rule provision, executive powers of sovereign immunities and governmental amnesties, of like, you know, between Wyatt Earp and like John Wayne, and like Del Taco, like once again. But anyway, yeah, so like all that information is going on through my mind, because I mean, I spent like decades just thinking about it and studying and looking for it, and going through a whole bunch of stuff that just didn't seem like, you know, that's it, not it at all, you know. And ultimately, it got to the books like Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country, Nimitz Glass, Turbulent Waters, and, you know, the House of Cards. And at levels, you know, that obviously involve the New York Stock Exchange importing and exporting, and, you know, the acronyms of the VP and being a vice president network, and practical application of methods of banking that seem to be immigration, custom enforcement, or, you know, whether it's loss prevention. And that's the deal, like what's going on with my American Express Bluebird Gold Card, the 15 digits, is that everyone that's on the phone is presenting complications, trying to make it sound like it's an issue of like a loss prevention as some idea, as not a protected issue of a U.S. patent or a tariff or citizenship and birthrights, or some non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization in the form of like, you know, the North American Free Trade Act. Yeah, so I mean, it seemed to be like all this information is going on, and information involving FHA HUD reimbursements based upon a premium paid for. It's like covering, you know, any default during a finance of a home for normally a 20 to 30 year period. I'm not sure if a 30 years the automatic standard, if that's the automatic perception advantage level 30 or FHA HUD. And the cash flow thing about non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization representing some idea of free trade, or the free and clear thing about, you know, real estate, normally not identified as escrow or cash flow, or the thing about, you know, reimbursement as finder's fees, do reimbursements based upon premiums paid for like insurance that covered in the event of an actual default or a claim of a FHA HUD. Yet the similarities of the Ulysses S. Grant combining the student loan with the Pell Grant, and even the EBT of SNAP food benefits combined with a Lone Star card, and now it seems to be the issue of whether or not if whoever's answering the phone is just presenting the idea of whether or not if two wrongs don't make a right, or, you know, maybe the Lackland Air Force Base and LULAC presenting, you know, the information Secrets of how the Federal Reserve runs the country as an electronic benefits transfer, and all of a sudden remember the Alamo in San Antonio representing some idea of, you know, the 100 Club in a way of like 310. I mean, is supplemental security representing Austin and Washington, D.C. and the U.S. dollar in San Antonio? Or is it really the idea of like Santa Claus coming down through the chimney with a bag of like, you know, presents? And really what it is seemed to be the, you know, Santa Ana issue, and like the trash bag on the toilet during the Abraham Lincoln Night Vision Shadow Government Stargate program. And, you know, think about like Diners Club. And Jose, can you see by the dawn's early light? You know, it's kind of like, I waited my whole life to be polite. And, you know, the humor about the Freddie Prinze Chico stick, like a political science drum major, and you know, the McDonald's Golden Arches being the color code of a Chico stick being predominantly like a light brown or gold. Yet, you know, it seemed to be like living on the edge of the American Express Bluebird card is the gold edge, the Freddie Prinze Chico stick. But is it a right wing or left wing issue of some fine upstanding citizenship on, I mean, the toilet? And the humor about, you know, Chico and the man. And now all this other information with Bryan Adams saying like cuts like a knife, and the color in the Free Sky FreeSkyRockyPro thing about the guy saying, consider it shredded, Mr. President, and me being taken to that location, in addition to like a lot of other like places of, you know, overseas English speaking stuff that seem to be like, you know, the We International, and I'm not sure if I can even distinguish the difference between State of the Union address that way, or even We International involving Warner, um, Electra, and like Atlantic, or if it's just a pronunciation side of Alpha American linguistics and participating factor somewhere between like the State of the Union address being alphanumerics of 192 as compared to the word in the Book of Thessalonians being the Transfiguration on Mount Olives. And I thought of, you know, the Lord Jesus Christ ascending after the third day, and from Mount Olives ascending and re-entering heaven. And the thing about, you know, the Book of Thessalonians and alphanumerics 192 and the plateau that way. Yeah, so like anyway, it's already gone on like an hour and 5 minutes and like 33 seconds already, yeah. So I wanted to include that because it seemed to be like right now what I'm thinking about is the Black and Blue thing, and the Bryan Adams and him singing "To Cuss Like a Knife," and an interview in Clear Lake, Texas on El Camino Real, and the Vortex, I think if my memory serves me correctly, Vortex Cutlery. And now it seemed to be this Bryan Adams singing that "Cuss Like a Knife," and the information of Vortex being 1997 and Rock Me Amadeus and the structure, the architecture, and like Moby, you know, from like 97 Rock, actually previously of like KLOL 101.1 FM Rock radio station. Moby the DJ, American DJ, yeah, going 97 Rock and a bunch of simulcasted, you know, beachfront, you know, live, you know, broadcast, simulcast. And I'm not sure if it really is simulcast other than maybe identifying the fact of mobile phone communications, or what that really is as compared to, you know, like landlines, or VSAT communications, and it seemed to be whether or not if that's going to be like a factor. It seemed to be like really distinguish the difference between AT&T and New Jersey being like the international headquarters, like the United States. It seemed to be that New Jersey and AT&T of the international network operations and the blue and white thing, and the Airbus beyond it, you know, the Bluebird bus in circuit, and you know, actually being put on it in like a real serious intense time during that time. I didn't remember it immediately, but yeah, the Airbus and the helicopter H-160 was involved, and the visual of before, I'm not sure anything before or actually being on it. I'm actually trying to remember, but the blue Airbus, the blue Airbus H-160 was also involved, and I'm actually trying to remember actually being on it. And right now, I don't know if it's going to be a trigger of like another music video or location. But all this information seems to be like now, and it's kind of like realizing how many people have been involved in a way that, I mean, I wouldn't even thought comprehendibly even possible. Is now obviously the reality about the memory minus the fact of being a 35-year period, seemingly to be the AT&T color code and a code blue of what was then, you know, a public phone, a blue phone, a Southwestern Bell, not being removed around the entire, I'm assuming the entire United States, but even more so without a doubt the Houston, Texas area. And the only place about it being inside, going through like sheriff's department or a governmental structure such as Harris, and everything that's involved. But it seemed to be the thing about, you know, Southwest Radio being, you know, an 8 o'clock position, whether AM or PM, and ultimately a 247 degree, based upon the Southwest Freeway and you know, even the United States Supreme Court Southwest Court reporter. The alphanumerics are 247, and ultimately in my mind automatically a Robert E. Rubin thing, and now it seems to be somewhere between the 100 Club and like Diners Club. It seems to be now, if it's the electronic benefits transfer of the area code 210 having a code blue of Diners Club, involving, you know, benefits involving supplemental security and the impression of San Antonio, and remember the Alamo as compared to, you know, remember the Alamo, and the only thing about Santa Ana might be the thing about the trash bag, a black trash bag, a black hole in space exploration, in the toilet. And, you know, Santa Claus is, really, is it Santa Claus is coming to town, or is it like really Santa Ana's got a bag of, you know, like the grander tenure thing about Diners Club, and, you know, Abraham Lincoln Night Vision Shuttle Government Stargate Program, and all this information is kind of like, you know, like in my mind, like right now, and like really happening. So like, I mean, if it's the deal at San Antonio representing some idea of like a, and, you know, I've called and actually talked and actually, you know, is San Antonio representing be in venue in Geneva, Switzerland, or Ellington Air Force Base, or even including Lackland in San Antonio. Ultimately, something about Latin America and the description of the history of the U.S. dollar in the book Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country. Anyway, like a lot's going on, and even knowing it or believing it, even knowing it or and all that information seems to be whether or not between Wells Fargo being clear access banking, presenting clear access banking, many people might not know anything about it other than that's being made available to the public. And automatically in my mind, it's just not happening. I've been there, and I know. I was there, and it's just wasn't going to happen. It's not that I was the one making that decision, but the information being made available to the public. Yet in my mind, it's a description as a regional executive position that's referring to a public account. And it seemed to be all that information is really at the Regions Bank of the prepaid now card and insights in Quicken Books presenting, the issue of like free and clear between FHA and HUD, reimbursements. It's like cash flow and free and clear of those two, insight and Quicken Books, yet at the same time, not really referred to in any kind of way. And it seemed to be the free and clear thing and electronic benefits transfer of a regional executive officer, and instead of involving like paper or any paper, such as like a Regions Bank presents, seemingly the pastel green color code, yet Wells Fargo presents, the hardcore hardware side of, hubbing, as compared to software engineering and the difference between hubbing, switching and routing, and like a node, and network performance monitoring and identifying the IP address is the issue between both of those, but totally, completely different how each of them function between a node and a hub. The IP address, making it great beyond internet protocol of a local area network of maritime law, seems to be, the point and direction that's involving all this information and getting all, aviation and FCC and aeronautic about, beyond maritime law of international financial management of SAN software. And Data Foundry presented that information that way of SAN software. It seemed to be more so on the monetary domestic side, more so of like a neighborhoods, degreed or non-degreed, whether it's urban, suburban, or, thought of like even, 2 9-hole golf courses with like tennis courts on it. And, the thing about Lincoln Continental, the rectangles on tennis court as compared to, all that information. And the question in the movie, yes, weird science, will a penny fall faster than a feather in a vacuum tube? Or the high-low silver or the Long John Silver thing about it, yeah. So, like, anyway, I'm going to have to take a break. It's already going on, like, an hour and 12 minutes and, like, 45 seconds right now. But I wouldn't include that much about, the Bryan Adams thing and the commercial, the FreeSkyRockyPro, and the guys that's in the advertisement in the woods saying, consider it shredded, Mr. President. And Mike thought of, like, connectivity of the Bryan Adams, the Vortex cutlery in 1997 of, like, maybe even the Rock Me Amadeus thing about, I'm assuming, even Orson Welles' narration of Nostradamus, and seemingly the highest possible score of 2,400 based upon Orson Welles' narration of, like, Nostradamus. Seemingly be just the academic thing about 2,400 of alphanumeric linguistics being, the accuracy of, like, alphanumerics, yet the analytical and symbolic of, like, pronunciation that way. But anyway, yeah, so I'm going to kind of like take a break right there, and I'll talk to you later. There it is, yeah.